In a stunning twist in North American diplomacy, a move few saw coming has upended the delicate balance between two of the world's closest neighbors. The usually tranquil relationship between Canada and the United States has been jolted by a bold decision from British Columbia, one that is already making waves across the continent. British Columbia has announced plans to impose tolls on American commercial lorries traveling to Alaska. This isn't just a minor policy change, it's a dramatic escalation in a simmering trade dispute, and it's aimed squarely at the heart of North American logistics. The Alaska Highway, a lifeline connecting the lower 48 states to Alaska, has long been a symbol of international cooperation and shared purpose. Now, with the announcement of these tolls, both Washington and Ottawa are scrambling to respond, as the shockwaves ripple through government corridors and business communities alike. For decades, this legendary route has stood as a testament to cross-border friendship, built during World War II as a joint effort. But today, the installation of toll booths threatens to transform this symbol of unity into a new battleground, where economic interests and national pride collide. Premier David Eby's plan signals a new era, one where Canada is no longer content to play a passive role in its relationship with the U.S. Instead, British Columbia is taking a stand, asserting its right to defend its own economic interests, even if it means ruffling feathers in Washington. Canada is no longer willing to absorb U.S. economic pressure without hitting back. The message is clear. If American policies threaten Canadian livelihoods, Canada will respond in kind, using the tools and leverage at its disposal. The decision, a direct response to American tariff threats, caught even top U.S. officials off guard. Many in Washington had underestimated Canada's willingness to retaliate, expecting the status quo to hold. Now they're facing a new reality. Suddenly Canada, long seen as the quieter partner, was flexing its muscles using geography as leverage. The vast expanse of British Columbia is now a strategic asset, and the Alaska Highway, once a symbol of unity, has become a powerful bargaining chip. The implications are immediate and personal, not just for politicians and diplomats, but for the thousands of truckers, business owners and families who rely on this route every day. For Alaskans, the free flow of goods through Canada is a necessity, not a luxury. Every shipment of food, fuel and supplies that travels this highway is a lifeline, connecting remote communities to the rest of the continent. The prospect of new costs and barriers has introduced uncertainty, threatening everything from grocery prices in Anchorage to oil operations in Prudhoe Bay. For businesses, the added expenses could mean slimmer margins or even layoffs. For families, it could mean higher prices at the checkout and fewer choices on the shelves. It's a stark reminder. In a connected world, political disputes can quickly become real-world challenges for ordinary people. What happens in government offices and diplomatic meetings doesn't stay there. It ripples outward, touching lives in ways both big and small, and reminding us all of the fragile ties that bind nations together. The roots of this crisis lie in President Trump's threat to impose sweeping 25% tariffs on nearly all Canadian goods. Unlike past disputes over specific industries, this was a broad economic assault, risking recession in key Canadian sectors. The mere threat sent shockwaves through Canada, whose economy is deeply tied to the U.S. Prime Minister Trudeau, responded with plans for retaliatory tariffs, signaling that Canada would no longer turn the other cheek. The message was clear. Canada would defend its interests, and the era of quiet compliance was over. Trump's tariffs, meant to project strength, instead ignited a firestorm of defiance and set the stage for a full-blown trade crisis. British Columbia's retaliation was swift and strategic. The province, known for its rugged landscapes and resilient people, decided to take a stand against what it perceived as economic aggression from its southern neighbor. Premier Eby's proposed legislation would levy significant tolls on American lorries heading to Alaska, a direct hit to a critical U.S. supply line. This move was not just about money, it was about sending a clear message that Canada would not be bullied. The plan is simple. If the U.S. makes it expensive for Canadian goods to cross the border, Canada will do the same for American goods crossing its territory. This tit-for-tat strategy aims to create a balance of economic power, ensuring that neither side can exploit the other without facing consequences. Repurposing existing way stations, the tolls are technically feasible and psychologically jarring. These way stations, once mundane checkpoints, have now become symbols of resistance and economic warfare. Eby also ordered provincial agencies to stop buying American products. This directive extends to all sectors from office supplies to construction materials, aiming to reduce dependency on U.S. goods, and banned liquor store sales from Republican-led states including Alaska. This ban is particularly impactful as it targets a popular consumer product, making the economic sting felt by everyday Americans. This multi-pronged approach is designed to inflict economic pain. By targeting multiple facets of trade and consumer goods, British Columbia aims to create a ripple effect that will be felt across various industries, and force the U.S. to reconsider its tariff threats. The hope is that the economic discomfort will lead to diplomatic negotiations, ultimately resulting in a more balanced trade relationship. Legal questions remain, but the political message is clear. Canada is willing to weaponize its geography and market access. The vast stretches of the Alaska Highway, once a symbol of cooperation, now stand as a potential battleground in this economic conflict. The threat alone has caused alarm, showing that Canada's response will be both broad and deep. The mere possibility of these measures has already sent shockwaves through the business community, highlighting the interconnectedness of our economies. EB frames these actions as reluctant but necessary, defending Canadian interests against U.S. aggression. He emphasizes that these measures are a last resort, aimed at protecting Canadian jobs and industries. Economic nationalism is now a two-way street. The actions taken by British Columbia serve as a reminder that in the global economy, every action has a reaction, and every policy has a consequence. British Columbia's bold move sparked a wave of solidarity across Canada. Ontario's Premier Doug Ford announced a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the U.S., threatening to cut off power entirely if tariffs persist. This is a potent threat. New England and the Midwest rely heavily on Canadian electricity. In the Yukon, Premier Ranj Pillai halted American liquor imports and restricted U.S. businesses from government contracts. Even personal ties are fraying, with calls to ban Donald Trump Jr. from the Yukon. Provincial leaders from all political stripes are uniting, turning Canada's federated structure into a powerful economic weapon. The message, an attack on one province is an attack on all, and Canada will respond as one. For Alaska's 730,000 residents, this dispute is an existential threat. While most cargo arrives by sea, lorries bring in the most critical, time-sensitive goods: fresh food, dairy, and vital equipment. New tolls or delays would drive up prices and risk shortages, hitting families and businesses hard. The oil and gas sector, dependent on rapid road transport for parts, faces costly disruptions. Alaskans feel powerless, caught between political decisions made far away. Governor Mike Dunleavy urges federal resolution, but the state's famed independence is now at the mercy of international politics. Canadian leaders are united in defending their actions as necessary responses to U.S. provocation. Premier Eby insists the tolls are a reluctant but essential defense of Canadian workers and industries. Prime Minister Trudeau emphasizes that the economies are deeply intertwined, and U.S. tariffs will hurt both sides. The message, Canada will not be bullied, and must stand up for its sovereignty. Yukon's Premier Pillai stresses the measures aren't personal, but a stand for fair trade and national dignity. Across the country, leaders agree. Short-term pain is better than long-term weakness. The days of quiet Canadian compliance are over. Canada's collective voice is clear. Retaliation is a duty, not a choice. Washington was caught completely off guard by Canada's swift and coordinated response. What began as a calculated move by the U.S. quickly turned into a diplomatic standoff, with American officials scrambling to assess the situation and its potential fallout. The mood in the capital shifted from confidence to concern almost overnight, as leaders realized the scale of the challenge they now faced. President Trump's initial reaction was one of outrage. He took to the podium, vowing not to back down and threatening even harsher restrictions in retaliation. His administration doubled down on its stance, insisting that America would not be pushed around. But behind the scenes there was growing anxiety about the possible consequences of escalating the conflict. State leaders, especially those in Alaska and the Northeast, were quick to sound the alarm. They saw the real-world consequences unfolding in their communities: higher prices at the pump, empty grocery store shelves, and growing uncertainty about energy supplies. For many, the threat of energy shortages and economic disruption was no longer hypothetical. It was becoming a daily reality. Alaska's Governor Mike Dunleavy stepped forward, urging both sides to remain calm and seek negotiation. He warned that further escalation could have devastating effects on his state, which relies heavily on cross-border trade and energy imports. Dunleavy called for a pragmatic approach, emphasizing the need for dialogue over confrontation. In New England, governors joined forces to pressure the White House to de-escalate the situation. With winter approaching, they feared blackouts and skyrocketing utility bills for their constituents. The prospect of families struggling to heat their homes added urgency to their calls for a diplomatic solution. The reality is that the U.S. and Canada share deeply integrated energy grids and supply chains. Disruptions on one side of the border quickly ripple across to the other, making both countries vulnerable to shortages and economic pain. The interdependence is undeniable, and leaders on both sides are forced to reckon with the risks. Canada's strategy is having a clear impact. Internal pressure within the U.S. is mounting, as business owners, workers, and everyday Americans begin to feel the strain. The risks of a full-blown trade war are becoming painfully clear, with economic uncertainty spreading from Wall Street to Main Street. The once unified American stance is now fracturing under the weight of local concerns and mounting public anxiety. As divisions deepen, the path forward grows more uncertain, and the nation faces tough choices about how to respond. The fallout extends far beyond lorries and tolls. Alaska's cruise industry, reliant on Canadian ports due to U.S. maritime law, could be devastated if Canada restricts access. The energy sector is at risk. Canada supplies the majority of U.S. oil, gas, and electricity. Disruption could mean price spikes and shortages for American consumers. Cross-border supply chains, especially in auto manufacturing, are threatened by tariffs, risking factory closures and job losses on both sides. The economies are deeply interwoven. A rupture in one area can trigger systemic failures. The dispute is a stark reminder: North America's prosperity depends on cooperation, not confrontation. The stakes are high for industries, workers, and consumers everywhere. This isn't just a political chess match, it's a crisis with real consequences for millions. Tolls on the Alaska Highway symbolize a breakdown in relations, raising costs, and isolating communities. Canadians see this as a moment of national resolve, but the risks of economic pain are real. Americans are learning that even superpowers depend on allies for stability and prosperity. The dispute forces both nations to reconsider the costs of economic nationalism and the value of partnership. The future is uncertain. Negotiation could resolve the crisis, or it could spiral into lasting damage. Ultimately, this is about people, families, workers, and communities whose lives are shaped by decisions far beyond their control.